This video brought to you by JadedPainting.com. If you need your miniatures painted to a tabletop standard, check out JadedPainting.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to the final part of this 3-part painting tutorial. As always, my name is Jay and I'll be showing you how I finished painting this Belial model, one of the new models for the Dark Angels Codex. I continued on all the red areas of the model by doing another highlight with Wild Rider Red, which is pretty much a bright red, almost an orange. For most of the areas, I just did a very light edge highlight, especially along the gun and the cloak and his sword. And then I tied all these reds together using a bloodletter glaze, which will darken the Wild Rider Red and bring it back into the red spectrum and really nicely blend these colors together. I then did a quick DRAKENHOF Nightshade on the rope on his chest. That way it'll tint it and make it almost a purple appearance. Next, I painted all the white areas of the model using white scars. This included the angel wings on the symbols on his legs and shoulder pads, as well as the pupils of his eyes. And the feathers on his gun, and the symbols on his chest and cloak. Remember, with white scars tends to be pretty thin, so remember to do 2 coats before proceeding to the next step. And then I did a DRAKENHOF Nightshade on all of the angel wings. That way it'll give them a blue tint between the feathers and really bring some really nice definition to all of these areas. Just remember to go light with your DRAKENHOF Nightshade and just get into the recesses and leave as much of the white on the feathers as possible. That way it's easier to do a highlight afterwards. I then did a non-oil shade on the feathers. Just get in the recesses and tint them a little bit to give the feathers some more definition. For the non-oil, I watered down with a 1-to-1 mix of non-oil and water. And while the shades were drying, I started on all the gold areas of the model with Balthasar Gold. Balthasar Gold tends to go over all these areas with relative ease, and so only requires typically a single coat. But just make sure you have nice even coverage with metallics, because gold areas are particularly vulnerable to being shown gaps in painting. So if you don't have a nice even coat, it'll be very easy to spot later. For these gold areas included the handle of his sword, both swords, one on his belt and in his hand, the parts and symbols on the banner and his gun, and the ones hanging from his jewelry. As you can see here, I'm just getting a nice even coverage on all these areas, so that way I can just give them a quick shading and some nice highlighting to make them really stand out and pop. I then did a non-oil shade on all of the gold areas. Once again, if you really want an older, worn-out appearance, I recommend a 1-to-1 mix of Agrax Earth shade and non-oil. I just wanted to keep these areas a little bit more pristine, so I just gave them a non-oil shading. This time I used it straight from the pot as opposed to diluting it for these areas. This will give it in all the recesses and provide some really nice depth of color to all the gold areas. And when the shade was dry, I gave a first highlight to all these gold areas with GEHENNA'S gold, which is a really nice reddish gold. So it's really warm, it gives a really nice warm feel to all the gold areas. Remember, with these areas, the goal is to do an overbrush or just a simple edge highlight so that you allow the raised areas to really stand out and pop, and leave the recesses the nice null oil shaded Balthasar gold. And this will create a nice gradient of colors on these gold areas so that it looks more worn out and more realistic in the end. Because if you've seen gold in person, you notice that it actually has several tints to it. And finally, I painted the gold strap on the gun with MOURNFANG brown while the highlight on the gold was drying, just to save a little bit of time. And MOURNFANG brown is a great dark reddish brown, which very easily mimics the color of leather, especially when combined with the shading. And then finally, I completed the gold areas with one more very, very light edge highlight of AURIC ARMOUR gold, which is a very bright yellowish gold, which really makes these areas stand out. I recommend just using this particular gold color on all the areas of the model in which the light source will be hitting to produce a realistic light source effect. And then I gave an Agrex Earth shade to the brown strap. I painted a triangle at the very top of each feather with gray liner. If you don't have gray liner, I recommend using Abaddon Black from Games Workshop. And then I painted all the symbols on the model with CALEDON sky, and then highlighted them up to Lothern blue, which I did not show. Since the scrolls are normally a bone color, but the bone color will blend in too much with the model, I painted them all Administratum gray to do a dark gray scroll look on all the parts and banners, as opposed to the normal bone color, because that way then you can see them when the model is done. So when using Administratum gray, just make sure you have a nice even coverage, and that way you'll clearly see the scrolls and the armor differently. And then next I gave all these areas a watered down non-oil shading with a 1-to-1 mix of non-oil and water. And this will just get in the recesses and slightly darken these gray areas to produce a little bit of variation and make them a little bit more older in appearance. And that's it. You now know how I painted up the Belial model, one of the 2 new awesome HQ models for the Dark Angels Codex. And in the end, I think it turned out really nicely. As you can see, I just used a dark gray gravel with a couple tufts. That way it'll produce a lot of variation between the color of the base and the color of the model. And I think it turned out really easily with a very relatively quick color scheme. And it looks really good and it'll look really great on the tabletop. So thank you very much for watching this video. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel if you already haven't done so, and leave a comment in the comment section down below. All of this really helps. So until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting everyone.